In a small village tucked between rolling hills and dense forests, an old man named Arthur lived alone in a quaint, weathered cottage. The small fireplace inside crackled with life, and the scent of pine and old books filled the air. Winter had come early that year, cloaking the village in a thick blanket of snow. Arthur, with his silver beard and kind, crinkling eyes, moved about his home with a steady rhythm. Each day began with a careful ritual. He would light the fire, prepare a simple breakfast of porridge and tea, and then set about his chores. Despite the chill outside, Arthur's cottage was a haven of comfort. His walls were lined with shelves filled with old, leather-bound books, each one a treasure trove of forgotten worlds and adventures. The armchair by the fireplace, worn but soft, was where he spent many an evening reading, wrapped in a knitted sweater that his late wife had made. Arthur liked to sit in his old rocking chair. He liked to admire the great mountains that his little cottage overlooked. He liked to read the newspaper, then read a book, and when he was done, he would take a long nap. Arthur loved nothing more than his quiet life in his little home.
Arthur had lived in the village all his life, and though his friends had long since passed or moved away, he had never felt lonely. The village children would often come by to help him with heavy lifting or to share their own stories of the day's adventures. They were like family to him, and he took great joy in their company. One particularly snowy afternoon, a fierce storm rolled in. The wind howled through the trees, and the snow fell in thick, swirling sheets. Arthur knew the storm would make travel difficult for the villagers, and he prepared his home for a long, cold night. He stoked the fire and made sure he had enough food and candles to last through the night. As the storm raged outside, Arthur settled into his armchair with a book of old poems. He read by the flickering light of a single candle, his thoughts drifting between the past and the present. The wind's howl was a lullaby that seemed to weave through his memories, bringing them to life. In the midst of his reading, he heard a knock on the door. The sound was barely audible over the storm, but it was persistent. Arthur rose slowly, his joints creaking in protest, and opened the door to find a young girl standing on his doorstep. She was shivering, her cheeks red from the cold. "Are you lost, dear?" Arthur asked, concern etched in his voice. The girl, her name was Lily, explained that she had been on her way home from the village but had gotten caught in the storm. Her house was still some distance away, and she had sought refuge in the nearest place she could find. Without hesitation, Arthur ushered her inside. He wrapped her in a warm blanket and set about preparing some hot cocoa. As they sat by the fire, he listened to her chatter about her family, her school, and her dreams. The warmth of the fire and the cocoa seemed to melt away the chill of the storm. Arthur shared stories from his own youth, tales of adventures and mishaps that made Lily's eyes widen with wonder. The evening passed in a comfortable haze of laughter and storytelling, the storm outside now a distant roar. When the storm finally subsided, Lily's family came to collect her, their faces relieved and grateful. They offered their thanks, but Arthur simply smiled and wished them well. The next morning, the village was transformed into a winter wonderland. The snow sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight, and the air was crisp and clear. Arthur stepped outside, feeling the fresh, cold air on his face. The storm had left behind a serene beauty, and he walked through the snow-covered village with a contented heart. As he made his way back to his cottage, he noticed something new, a small bundle on his doorstep. It was a gift from Lily and her family, a beautifully knitted scarf and a basket of fresh bread. The gesture was simple but filled with warmth, much like the spirit of the village itself. Arthur wrapped the scarf around his neck, feeling its softness against his skin. He returned to his cottage with a smile, knowing that even in the quietest moments, the warmth of human kindness could turn the coldest winter day into a season of joy.